The train pulled into Dryville Station just past dusk, steam curling through the air like breath from a dying animal. Dust clung to the iron wheels and soaked into the hems of women's skirts as they stepped down onto the wooden platform. Among them, a lone figure hesitated, one gloved hand clutching a worn carpetbag, the other hidden inside a threadbare coat that did nothing against the cold rising off the high desert. Her name was Lottie Gray. She had crossed 5 states on her own with barely enough coins to keep her fed, and a piece of paper folded in her coat lining, the only proof that someone on the other end had asked for her. The paper was stained with sweat and frayed at the edges. It bore 5 words in a man's hard scrawl: "You'll be taken care of." No name, not even his, just the county, the ranch, and the promise. The platform emptied around her. Her boots, second-hand and blistering, held her rooted as if the boards beneath her feet might vanish the second she moved. Then a man emerged from the shadows beyond the station post, a shape more silhouette than flesh. He didn't speak. Just stood watching. He was taller than she expected, wide through the shoulders, dark coat stiff with dust and weather. His face bore no welcome, just a knife-blade stare and a silence deeper than the plains. "You him?" she asked, voice catching like a match on wet tinder. He nodded once. "Get in the wagon." She did. There was no handshake, no inquiry about her trip, just the creak of wheels over packed earth and the hush of cold wind through sage. The man didn't offer his name, and she didn't ask, not until they were halfway across the open range, stars coming out like rifle holes in the sky. "I'm Lottie," she said, "Charlotte Gray, from Missouri." He didn't look at her. "Name's Ransom Pike." Nothing more. They rode in silence, dusk bleeding into full night, until the house appeared in the distance, more fortress than home, a skeletal thing perched above the coulee. Weather-beaten boards. A single lantern burning in a front window. No dogs, no children's toys, no sign of anyone waiting. He led her inside without speaking. The kitchen was cold. The stove long since gone out. A pot sat on the table, untouched. "Guest room's down the hall. You'll keep to it." She hesitated, hands stiff on her bag. "And the papers. You wrote for a wife, Mr. Pike." "I wrote for a body that could clean the house, cook a meal, and keep their mouth shut." She blinked. Her chest tightened. "But you promised." "I promised you'd be taken care of. You're here, ain't you?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, sir, I'll do anything to stay." Ransom turned then, his eyes gray like worn metal. "You'll work for your keep. I don't need crying, I don't need stories. You do your part, I do mine. That's how it is." Then he walked out, leaving her with the cold stove and the long silence of the house. Lottie stood there a while, not moving, not crying. She knew better. Back in Missouri, men drank pity like whiskey. It went down sweet but turned bitter quick. She unpacked her bag in the dark, folded her hands, and sat on the edge of the hard bed in a room that smelled of dust and old pine. Outside, wind scraped against the shutters like something trying to get in. In the morning, she'd rise before dawn. She'd scrub and cook and keep to herself. She'd be the kind of wife he asked for, quiet, useful, invisible. But inside her, something already stirred. Not hope, not yet, just the faintest flare of heat. The kind that starts deep and slow, like fire catching in wet wood. Something in her had survived worse than silence, worse than cold. And it was not done yet. The morning came with no warmth, just a pallid sky and the smell of ash from a dying fire somewhere deep in the walls. Lottie rose before the rooster, pulled on her shawl, and found the wash basin. The water was stiff with ice. She didn't flinch. She cleaned her face, bound her hair, and went to the kitchen. Ransom Pike had left already. His boots were gone from the doorway. The rifle that leaned by the door was missing. A rough slice of bread sat on the table beside a tin cup of leftover coffee, cold and bitter as old blood. He hadn't bothered to speak to her, but he'd left a bucket of firewood near the stove. She took it as a kind of language. Rough, reluctant, but not cruel, not yet, she lit the stove. By the time the light bled through the warped windows, she'd swept the floors, cracked eggs from the chicken coop, and stitched the tier in the curtain over the sink. The rhythm came to her easily. She had worked kitchens since she was old enough to hold a broom, but this wasn't some boarding house where laughter ran through the rafters and girls gossiped over stews. This place held nothing but echoes. Dust whispered through the beams like secrets. Nails groaned in the walls. Every board knew how to complain. By the third day, she learned how many steps it took to cross the porch, where the floor creaked loudest, which windows stuck, which locks caught. She found the ledger on the desk near the back hall and saw his tidy columns, supplies, feed, tool repairs, each line neat as a soldier's boot. No room for sentiment, no sign of anything soft. The only room she hadn't entered was the one at the end of the hall, Ransom's door, always closed. He returned late each night, bringing with him the smell of sweat and saddle leather, sometimes blood. She heard the sounds, hooves in the dirt, the clang of the barn latch, the low mutter of cattle shifting in the night. Once she peeked from her window and saw him by lantern light, sleeves rolled, cleaning his knife with careful strokes. Not one word passed between them the first 5 days. But on the 6th, he entered the kitchen while she was bent over the hearth, apron soiled with soot. She hadn't heard him. When she turned, startled, his hand was already at his belt, not in threat but to loosen the pistol holster before sitting. He sat at the table like a man waiting for judgment. "You were married before?" she asked. His gaze flicked up, sharp. "You're not here to ask questions." "I just meant the house feels hollow, like someone left it behind." He didn't answer right away, just looked past her toward the window. "Used to be full," he said finally. "Family, brothers, one wife, all gone now." The words dropped like stones, heavy, unpolished, final. Lottie returned to the stove. She stirred the beans, cut bread, plated food. She didn't press him again. But that night, after the dishes were washed and the fire banked low, he left a small box on the table before disappearing down the hall. Inside were 2 pairs of new gloves, one her size. She sat staring at them a long while, not smiling. Just still, it was the first gesture that felt like something close to kindness. Over the next week, a rhythm formed. She kept the house. He worked the ranch. They moved through the space like ghosts circling the same grave, each aware of the other, never touching. He spoke little, but his silence changed. Less like a blade now, more like a wall, high, wide, but not impossible to scale if you knew where to look. One afternoon, she brought him a cup of coffee while he was mending fence in the lower pasture. He didn't thank her, just took it, sipped, then handed it back. "You're stronger than you look," he said, not meeting her eyes. "You're quieter than I expected," she replied. That earned her a half-smile, faint, gone in a breath. The cold deepened. Snow came early that year. Coyotes howled closer to the ridge. Ransom started locking the barn, started keeping the rifle nearer, even indoors. "Something wrong?" she asked as she fixed supper. "Bad men sniffin' through the North Range. Cattle gone missing. Don't open the door at night." She nodded. "Should I keep a pistol?" He looked at her then as if seeing something new, something not small, not soft. "You ever fired one?" She thought of her father's hand on hers, guiding her grip when she was just 12. Missouri woods, a copperhead in the garden. "Yes." He handed her his second revolver. "Then keep it under your pillow." That night, as she lay in bed with the weight of the gun tucked beneath her, she listened for his footsteps in the hall. They paused outside her door just for a second, then moved on. She didn't sleep, not because she was afraid, because for the first time in a long while she didn't feel alone. Winter tightened its grip like a hand closing on a throat. The sun came late and left early, casting the ranch in a blue shadow that never lifted. The land froze. Water troughs turned to ice. Horses moved stiffly through the drifts. Inside, the house breathed warmth only where Lottie fought for it, stoking the hearth, layering quilts, sealing the cracks with rags and wax. Her fingers split from the cold, but she didn't complain. She wore the gloves he gave her until they wore thin, then stitched the tears by lamplight with the same quiet patience she used for everything. Ransom noticed. Not with words, but with small things, a fresh bundle of wood, an extra blanket left at her door, a wedge of smoked venison wrapped in wax paper on the table one morning. They hadn't spoken of the marriage again. She hadn't asked if he intended to make her a wife in truth, and he hadn't offered. Their arrangement remained unspoken, a wire stretched taut between them. But the way he watched her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, it chipped at the silence. Not tenderness, not yet, but recognition. The kind a man has for a creature he thought wouldn't survive but did. One night the quiet shattered. It came with the sound of hooves at a dead run. Lottie was at the stove when it started, distant at first, then close enough to rattle the windows. Ransom was on his feet in seconds, rifle in hand, boots not even laced. She followed him to the front room as he pressed himself against the doorframe, listening. "Stay here," he said. "Ransom. Stay low, don't speak, don't show your face." Then he was gone, into the white. She crouched behind the curtain, fingers on the revolver's grip. The air throbbed with cold. Her breath came shallow. Then voices, rough, male, unfamiliar, broke through the wind. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Threat wrapped in a false laugh, the kind drunk men used before knives came out. Then the crack of a rifle, just once, then silence. She stood there, not blinking. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. When the door finally opened, Ransom stepped inside with a streak of blood down his cheek and a torn coat. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were steady. 3 of them, sent 2 back up the ridge with warning shots. Third one stay in the night, outside. "What do you mean?" He looked at her. "I buried him." She moved without speaking, filled a basin, fetched linen, poured whiskey into a cup. He let her clean the gash without flinching. His shirt was soaked through, blood, snowmelt, and sweat. She worked quietly, then wrapped the bandage tight. When it was done, he caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to hold her still. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "Didn't think anyone would come this far. Not for me. Men like that don't come for who you are. They come for what you have." His jaw flexed. "You don't have to protect me," she said. "Yes, I do." A beat passed, the fire crackled. "Why?" she asked. His hands slid away. "Because you stayed." That night he didn't return to his room. He sat near the fire, rifle across his lap, boots by the door, watching, waiting, guarding. She left a blanket beside him without a word. By morning he was still there, awake. After breakfast he finally asked what he hadn't dared before. "Back in Missouri, what did you leave behind?" She folded the towel in her hands. Her voice came quiet. "My sister. She's buried under a sycamore tree behind the schoolhouse. She was 11. He didn't press her, just waited. "The man who took me in after the fever wasn't family. He wanted things I wouldn't give, so I ran." "You could have gone anywhere." "Why here?" She met his eyes, steady now. "Because the farther I went, the harder I became. I figured the end of the world was the only place that might not try to use me up." He didn't flinch, didn't pity. "You were right," he said. She nodded once. In the days that followed, something between them shifted. He no longer walked around her like a stranger in his own home. He started speaking more, short, careful words, like stones laid one at a time to build a road. He told her about his brothers, the war, the fire that took half the barn and his wife with it, not in detail, just enough for her to understand the quiet wasn't emptiness, it was armor. And he began to eat her food at the table instead of standing, began to speak her name, began to see her not as a body to do work, but a presence he didn't want to lose, but no vows were spoken, no ring offered. Still, each morning she woke and made coffee. Each night she banked the fire. Each day she grew less like a guest and more like someone who had earned the walls around her. Spring would come, but the thaw would not be kind. Spring came hard. The ground, long frozen, broke open with a violence that split fence posts and swelled the rivers past their banks. Calving season followed like a storm behind the thaw. Ransom barely slept. Neither did Lottie. They worked side by side in mud and wind, hands raw, shoulders sore, clothes soaked through with birth and blood and rain. She didn't ask for permission anymore. She saddled her own horse, roped strays, hauled buckets, stitched hide. The other ranchers started to notice. Men who used to glance past her now tipped their hats. One even made the mistake of reaching for her wrist outside the supply post in Willow Vale. She broke his nose with the butt of her pistol before he touched skin. Ransom didn't scold her, didn't need to, just handed her a fresh cloth when they got home and sat quiet while she cleaned the blood from her knuckles. "You got more fight in you than a pit dog," he said. "I had to." "You still do." They didn't call it love, neither of them would have dared, but something bone-deep passed between them in those days, a knowledge. That he would bleed for her and she would kill for him if it came to that. The first kiss came without warning. It was late. The barn lantern had guttered out. She stood in the loft, arms full of feed sacks, too tired to climb back down. He came to check the hinges after the wind had torn loose a shutter. Found her there. Their faces met in the half-dark, breath steaming between them. He didn't ask. She didn't resist. His mouth was dry. Hers was trembling. It was not soft. It was not tender, but it was honest, and it was needed. Afterward, neither spoke of it, but from that moment something inside them had changed, the way they moved around each other, the glances that lingered. The way his hand sometimes found her lower back when they passed in the doorway, the way she poured his coffee first now. He kissed her again 2 nights later, this time in her room with the door shut. By then, the pastures had begun to green. But peace is a fragile thing in land like this. It doesn't last long. The signs came slow. A steer found gutted, half-eaten, but not by coyotes. A trail of bootprints near the northern line fence. A shot fired in the night, distant, unanswered. Then a letter, nailed to their barn door with a blade. Ransom read it in silence, passed it to her. "You think you're safe behind your little fence, Pike. We remember what you did in Oxbow. You've got something that don't belong to you now. We'll be back for it." For her, too, she didn't blink. What happened in Oxbow? He didn't lie. There was a man, name of Merrick. Ran slaves through the hills, girls, children. I burned his camp. Killed 2 of his men. Thought the rest were dead or scattered. Lottie stared at the note again. He wants me. He wants power, wants to take what I won't give. Her throat tightened. What do we do? His voice didn't rise. It never did. We dig in. And we make them regret it. That night they barred the doors. She loaded every chamber. He sharpened every blade. They set traps near the ridge and scattered glass along the trail. They didn't run. That wasn't who they were. She came to him in the dark, not with fear, but purpose. "You never asked again," she said, "about being your wife." He looked at her long and hard, then took her face in his calloused hands. "I didn't ask because I didn't want to shame it with the wrong words." "You don't need words." He kissed her with the weight of everything he hadn't said. Then they lay together in the narrow bed, not like lovers in a storybook, but like animals beneath the threat of a coming kill. Flesh to flesh, no promises, just heat, just need, just the quiet prayer that morning might still come. Outside, the wind moaned low across the prairie, carrying with it the scent of gunpowder and blood. Something was moving in the dark. Something that had waited a long time to finish what it started, but so had she. The attack came before dawn, no warning, no war cry, just fire and gunshots splitting the dark like a knife through skin. The barn went first, lit from within by the blaze of oil and match. Horses screamed, wood snapped like bone. Ransom was already up, boots on, rifle in hand. Lottie was behind him before the second shot cracked. She wore only her nightdress and coat, but she didn't hesitate. Her fingers found the revolver, her hair, unbound, tangled with smoke. "They'll try to circle the corral," he said, eyes narrow at the window. "Try to flush us out." "How many?" "5, maybe more. We kill the first 2, the others might scatter." She didn't nod, just slipped out the back while he covered the porch. The cold bit deep. Smoke rolled through the trees, thick and low. She moved fast, low to the earth, her feet silent on the frost-hard dirt. The first man she saw was crouched by the fence post, aiming for the kitchen window. He never heard her coming. The shot was clean, base of the skull. His body dropped like meat. She didn't look twice. The second turned at the sound, raised his pistol, too slow. She fired again. His shoulder snapped back. He dropped the gun, staggered, turned. She shot him again, in the chest, 2 down. A third man saw her silhouette through the smoke and screamed. "She's here, the bitch is here." Bullets tore the air. She dropped behind the trough, mud soaking through to her knees. From the house, Ransom's rifle roared. A man screamed, then silence. She crawled to the shed, waited, watched. Another figure moved along the tree line, taller, slower. This one wasn't here to kill quick. This one had purpose. He carried a scar across his jaw and a grin that didn't touch his eyes. "Charlotte Gray," he called. "Your man, not who you think he is. He burned girls, just like the men he killed." She didn't answer. "You hear me? Oxbow was a lie. He left them locked in the church, set fire, watched it burn." Still, she said nothing. "He's a killer, same as me. Difference is I don't lie about it." She stepped out from the side of the shed, gun raised. "Neither do I." He turned too slow again. She shot him in the leg, then the gut, then walked closer. He dropped to his knees. "Please," he coughed. "You don't know what he did." She didn't blink. "I know what he's done since." One last shot ended it. When she returned to the house, Ransom was at the doorway, face bloodied, sleeve torn, but standing. He saw the look in her eyes and didn't speak, just opened his arms and she stepped into them. They buried the bodies at the edge of the pasture. No words, no prayers, just the wind and the crows. That night she stood at the window, watching the smoke drift low across the field. Ransom stood behind her, arms around her waist, forehead resting against her shoulder. "They'll send more," he said. "Let them. You didn't hesitate." "No," she said. "I'm sorry it had to be like this." She turned, took his face in her hands. "I'm not." The next morning they didn't talk of what they'd done. They went to work, rebuilt the barn frame. Tended the horses that had fled and returned, restacked the fence, cleaned the blood from the porch. They didn't look back. By week's end, she wore a ring made from braided horsehair and silver wire he'd forged from a melted bullet casing. He didn't kneel, she didn't cry. He said only, "You already are, but now it's spoken." She kissed him hard, full. And when the dusk came, they stood together on the porch, guns cleaned and loaded, eyes scanning the horizon, not waiting. Just ready, summer came heavy and slow, dragging heat across the plains like a dragging chain. The ranch, scorched and blood-marked, held steady through it all. The land knew what it meant to bleed and heal. So did Lottie. She moved now like someone who belonged, not in name, not in deed, but in root. Her steps were sure. Her voice, when she used it, carried weight. The men in town gave her space. The banker called her Mrs. Pike without needing correction. She'd earned it all the hard way. The ranch bore signs of the fight but none of defeat. The barn rose again, stronger than before, its beams fitted tight by her own hands and Ransom's quiet precision. New horses had come. 3 colts, wild as storm wind, brought down from the high passes. She broke them herself. One tried to throw her. It didn't try twice. Ransom watched her from the fence post that evening, sweat staining his collar, pride hidden in the corners of his mouth. "You should have been a rancher, not a bride," he said. She met his eyes, brushed dirt from her knees. "I didn't know women were allowed to be both." He didn't argue, but the quiet never lasted long. Peace wasn't something this land handed out freely. It came with a ledger, and old debts always came due. The first sign was a rider, lone, black coat, pale hat, moved like a man with nowhere to be and too much time to get there. Lottie saw him from the ridge as she brought in the mules. He didn't stop at the gate, just tipped his hat and passed on through, heading south. Ransom said nothing at first. Then that night, by firelight, he finally spoke. "Name, Eli Jarrow." She didn't know it, was a judge once, vigilante kind, rode circuit law after the war, got a taste for hanging. Didn't stop when the courts came back, took a bounty to kill Merrick's men. Ended up worse than all of them. And now, he's looking for me, or you, or both, don't matter which. Lottie turned her face toward the window. The night beyond it felt thick, alive. Will he come with men? He don't need men. A week passed. Nothing came. Then on the 7th day, smoke rose from the Harper place, 5 miles east. By the time Ransom got there, the barn was gone. 2 men dead, 1 woman missing. Her name was Dinah Harper, young, strong. Too bold for her own safety. Lottie found her body 2 days later, stripped, beaten, left beneath a cottonwood, posed like a warning, Jarrow's signature. This wasn't just vengeance, it was theater. He wanted them to feel it. Ransom sharpened the long knife that night, the one from Oxbow, the one he hadn't touched in years. "I swore I'd never carry this again." Lottie tied back her hair. "I swore I'd never need a man to protect me again." They didn't speak after that. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, Ransom rode out to Willow Vale, told the sheriff, the preacher, the blacksmith, anyone with a rifle and a spine. Lottie stayed behind. She laid out oil for the pistols, polished the brass buckles. Packed her father's old saddlebag with ammunition, flint, and whiskey. Then she walked into the pasture, alone, and sat under the same tree where she buried the last man who'd threatened her life. She spoke to no one, just waited. At dusk she heard hooves, not from the road, from the trees. She turned, slow, pistol in hand. Jarrow emerged like a shadow pulled free from bone, thin, hard, smiling with no teeth. "You're her," he said, "the one who stayed." Lottie didn't flinch. "And you're the one who should have stayed dead." He laughed low. "I'm not here to kill you, not yet. Just wanted to see the girl who took what belonged to a killer." She stepped forward, wind pulling her coat aside. "He never belonged to you. Neither did those girls. Neither does this land." Jarrow smiled wider. "You talk like someone who ain't bled enough yet." She didn't raise the gun. "Not yet. I talk like someone who's ready to bleed again if it means burying you." His hand twitched toward his belt. But before steel could clear leather, another shot rang out from the ridge, Ransom's rifle. The bullet grazed Jarrow's arm, spinning him sideways. Lottie fired, missed. Jarrow vanished into the woods, bleeding and laughing, gone for now. They didn't sleep that night, just watched the tree line waiting for movement. "He'll come back," she said. "Yes." "And we finish it." "Yes." Ransom looked at her hands, bloodied, calloused, wrapped tight around the pistol grip. "You don't have to become like me." She turned her eyes to him. "I'm not. I'm becoming what the world made me. Jarrow came with the fireflies. Twilight burned low across the hills, soft and gold, while the shadows stretched long and wrong across the land. The cattle were restless, the birds too quiet. Lottie stood at the edge of the porch, pistol belted high, hair tied back, every sense coiled like wire. "He's close," she said. Ransom stepped beside her, the long knife sheathed across his back, rifle slung forward. He didn't ask how she knew. She stopped guessing days ago. She just felt things now. Like the way storms move in bone, she moved first. They didn't wait for him to come to the door. She tracked through the tree line behind the pasture, circling wide, boots silent, coat heavy with bullets. Ransom split west. They didn't speak, not even a look. The plan had no words. Just instinct and vengeance. She found the camp in a hollow where the creek bent hard into stone, 3 horses, a cook fire low, more smoke than flame, no men in sight, but she felt him. Then she heard it. The click of a hammer drawn back behind her. "You came," Jarrow said. She turned slowly, hands up, pistol holstered. His face was half shadow, half smile, blood still crusted on the old wound across his arm. He looked thinner now, more hungry. "I've been waiting," she said. "You had a choice." "No," she said. "You made sure of that." He raised the revolver. "I could make it quick." She stepped forward once. "You never made anything quick. You like to watch." His face twisted. "Don't pretend you understand me." She moved her hand, just enough, not for her gun, for the knife Ransom had slipped into her coat earlier, just beneath the seam. Her fingers found the handle, her voice stayed level. "You kill girls who can't fight, burn boys in their sleep. You want to be feared, but men like you always die the same way, small, afraid, and alone." He stepped closer. "Big words for a girl who came here to beg." "I didn't come to beg." The blade came free in a flash of motion. She slashed low, caught his thigh. He screamed, staggered, fired once, missed. She dove behind the log, rolled, drew the pistol. 2 more shots cracked through the air. She hit him once, shoulder. The second he dodged, then silence. She crept low around the fire pit. His breath rasped, close. A twig snapped behind her. She spun. But it was Jarrow. Ransom tackled him from the dark, driving him into the coals. Smoke and sparks roared up. Jarrow screamed, flailing, biting. Ransom didn't let go. His hands found the man's throat, but Jarrow's knife was still in his hand. Steel flashed. Ransom gasped. Lottie fired again, this time into the side of Jarrow's head. The man collapsed without sound. Blood pooled fast. She was on her knees beside Ransom in seconds, his shirt soaked dark, the blade buried low in his ribs. He coughed once, eyes bright with pain. "No," she said, pressing her hands down hard. "It's deep," he rasped. "I don't care." "You stayed. I told you I would." He smiled barely. "Good girl." She pulled the knife free, packed the wound, tied it tight with her scarf. He passed out. She didn't stop working. She dragged him back by horse, bleeding and pale, but alive. She burned Jarrow's body to ash before the sun rose. No grave, no marker, just fire. The next weeks passed slow. Fever came, then it broke. Ransom woke one morning to the smell of bacon, the sound of her humming. She sat by the stove, sleeves rolled, face streaked with ash and flour. "You're alive," she said, not looking back. Disappointed. She came to his side, sat on the bed, pressed her palm to his chest. "No," she whispered, "you stayed." He touched her jaw, rough, gentle, the only way he knew how. "You were the one who asked to stay." She leaned close, breath warm. "I asked," she said, "but I earned it." They were married that fall in a field of tall grass, under the burnt orange light of a harvest sky. No preacher, no guests. Just 2 people in the land that had tried to kill them. He gave her his name. She gave him her vow, no ring, no lace, just blood, ash, and the memory of fire. She had come to him a desperate girl, trembling on a train platform with nothing left but hope. Now she stood a woman forged in gunfire and silence, stronger than the wind, colder than the grave, and he knew. She was the one thing this world couldn't take. Not by threat, not by blade, not by time. She was his, and he was hers. Because when she begged that first night, "Please, sir, I'll do anything to stay," what she really meant was this: "I will survive you. I will outlast this land. I will make this life mine."